stand by for manual transmission in 3, 2, 1.
Wow, what a great intro. It pretty much sums up the history of the BattleTech universe in about 2 minutes, and it does so with great art and music and without needing to say a single word. Greetings, mercenaries and the merely curious. Manus Dekker here with episode 1 of my no-nonsense guide to BattleTech. So just to be clear, this guide will focus on the tactical turn-based computer game published in 2018. Also, no nonsense might be a bit of an overstatement, so let's call this a less nonsense guide. For those who came in late, the MechWarrior and BattleTech series of computer and tabletop games occupy the same fictional universe with all the same factions and battle mechs. Set in the 31st century, it's literally Game of Thrones in space, with 5 great successor states fighting a series of wars for control of the once mighty Star League's corpse. In both of the most recent computer games, you'll be the commander of a small mercenary company, and you'll make your living fighting for and against these 5 great powers and many smaller ones. What differentiates the 2 games is how they simulate this fictional universe and the fighting you'll do. MechWarrior 5 uses a first-person simulation running in real time, whereas BattleTech, as previously mentioned, uses a tactical turn-based system similar to the classic tabletop game. Style-wise, MechWarrior is to BattleTech as paintball is to chess. As a consequence, MechWarrior 5 is a much more chaotic, action-oriented experience where quick thinking, reflexes, and coordination will often carry the day. By contrast, BattleTech gameplay is much more controlled, slow-paced, deliberate, and complex. So, if you like the idea of big stompy robot warfare, but you want it in a more relaxed, less twitch reflex dependent format, BattleTech might be for you. In this episode, we'll discuss the best way to get the game, we'll discuss who the actual enemy is, and we'll discuss how to set up your mercenary company to keep this enemy at bay. Along the way, I'll show you how I train my mech warriors and how I set up my lances to take advantage of that training. Check the description for timestamps to the various sections, and while you're there, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Big Stompy Robot content. It only takes a moment, but it really helps the channel. At this point, in June of 2022, we're just a few subs away from the 2K mark, and that's great. But if we're going to meet my goal of 1 million subscribers by the end of the year, we're going to need to pick up the pace. We need to add another 166,350 subs per month for the rest of the year. So get on it, people. Even if you're already subscribed, what about your pets? Or any children or grandparents with accounts you might have access to? Remember, you can always do more. So let's talk about how to get the game. If you have Game Pass for PC, you can play the base game for free. This will allow you access to the campaign, which is actually a pretty good BattleTech story full of political intrigue and betrayal as you help restore House Urano to the throne of the Recon Coalition, a small periphery state. This is actually the best way to learn how to play the game if you're new. So once you've completed the campaign, if you want more, there are 3 excellent DLCs that add a sandbox-style career mode with a lot of new mechs, maps, and mission types. You will have to pay for these. Full price for the game and all DLCs will run pretty high. Luckily, since the game is about 4 years old now, its content regularly goes on sale for a fraction of the cost. This is important because if you want to play beyond the campaign, you will need all 3 DLCs for the best experience. It's all good content. I've played the campaign and 3 full careers over the course of about 500 hours, and I haven't even gotten to the mods yet. If you like turn-based combat, this should be at the top of your wish list, waiting for the next Steam sale. So now let's talk about the actual enemy in the game. If you're playing the campaign, you might think the enemy is the guy who deposed Lady Urano in the coup. If you're playing in career mode, or if you're coming over from MechWarrior 5, you might think the enemy is whoever you're fighting at the time. Both conclusions are reasonable, and both conclusions are dead wrong. I'll let you in on a little secret here. In this game, you can be defeated on the battlefield, you can get all your mechs destroyed, and all your mech warriors killed. You can even get your commander injured, needing months to recover. But your commander will always survive the battle to potentially fight another day. Yeah, your career or campaign can only end in one of 2 ways, with successful retirement or bankruptcy. So yeah, the real enemy is that loan officer with the Comstar Credit Union on Bit of Heaven that talked you into taking that loan out to buy your dropship and mechs. And if you fail to make one single monthly payment, not even a full 400-ton Steiner Scout Lance will be enough to keep the repo men at bay. Now, I know what you're thinking. How hard can it be to earn a few 100,000 C-bills each month? Well, the answer is surprisingly hard if you don't have trained, healthy mech warriors and well-equipped and repaired mechs to earn with. Too much downtime will quickly lead to bankruptcy, especially in the early stages of the game when you'll have very limited resources and no real reserve forces at all. Downtime in BattleTech comes from 3 sources. The first is travel. Even with state-of-the-art spacefaring technology in the 31st century, it will take weeks to travel between theaters of operation. This downtime is unavoidable, and you will still have to pay expenses while in transit. Because of this, you will want to take as many contracts as possible in each system you visit, so that you can pay jump ship fees and cover operating costs while traveling. The other 2 sources of downtime come from injuries to mech pilots and repairs to mechs. Like travel, these sources of downtime cannot be avoided, but they can be managed and minimized. This will be essential if you want your nice long career to end in a comfortable retirement rather than being cut short, ending in poverty and shame. First, let's talk about minimizing downtime due to pilot injuries. This problem is easy to fix. We just need more pilots. When you start the game, you'll have your commander and 4 more mech pilots. This is not enough, so go ahead and hire at least 2 more. It doesn't matter how bad they are, because we'll need to train them anyway. We'll talk more about how to train them in another section, but right now, you just need to understand that mech pilots will get injured, and waiting for them to heal up is bad for business. So you will need to maintain a roster of 6 or 7 well-trained mech pilots to be effective and ready to work at all times. Just to illustrate this point a bit more, allow me to introduce Amir Kowalski. This guy gets killed so often it started a meme, and the devs added a secret achievement for keeping him alive throughout the whole campaign. When I started a new campaign recently, I thought, yeah, this one will be pretty easy to get if I can get him past the first mission. Dekker did catch a stray bullet on that first mission, but he was out for less than a month. He did fine on his second drop, and by his third, I had him safely ensconced in a newly refitted Vindicator. Everything was going fine until... Holy shit! Ha! Oh, damn it, it just wasn't to be. You gotta be shitting me, man. Ah! And yeah, that kinda sucks. But it also makes the game scary, especially if you play Iron Man mode like I usually do. And that's kinda awesome. Managing mech repair times is a bit more challenging, especially in the early part of the game. This is because mechs are rare and expensive out in the periphery, and we can't just go out and buy more of them. When you start your campaign, you'll have 5 mechs, basically a single light lance with 1 spare. If you're playing in career mode with the Heavy Metal DLC, and you take the mystery crate offered by Yang's Shady Associates, you'll have 1 extra medium mech. Either way, you'll need to be careful with them because Yang can only fix 1 mech at a time. This means repair times stack. And for an entire lance with moderate damage, repair time can stretch out for weeks or months. Be sure to use the Manage Task feature to have your most needed repairs done first. To make matters worse when starting out, you will not have any spare parts to refit your mechs with either. With limited replacement mechs and no spare parts, we need to be smart and make the most of what we do have. If we check out our stock mechs, we'll see that they all have too many jump jets and too little armor. Lucky for us, the one thing we will have an infinite supply of is armor. Replacing armor after a battle takes very little time and costs nothing. So my recommendation is to remove all but 1 or 2 jump jets from each of the mechs and use the extra tonnage for more armor. I usually try to run max armor on the head and any arm with a weapon system. Then for the torso, we'll want to use most of our armor up front with less on the back and legs. The next thing we can do to minimize repairs and downtime is to always drop heavy. Contracts in the periphery are rated by skulls. Every mission is rated from 1/2 to 5 skulls in difficulty. Each skull's worth of difficulty translates to about 80 tons in drop mass. That is, for a 2-skull mission, you should plan to drop a lance of at least 160 tons. But here's the thing, these ratings are just rough estimates based on sketchy intel. So just to be safe, you should assume the rating is an underestimate and pad your force. I always try to drop at least 100 tons per skull. There's no penalty for this, and the extra firepower should mean less time for the OPFOR to fire back, and less damage for us. Another way to gauge difficulty is by C-bills. If you see two one-skull missions on MERCnet, and one of them is paying 200,000 C-bills, and the other is paying 500,000 C-bills, you can bet the one with the higher payday will be much more trouble. When I see missions like these, I do the low-pay ones first, and save the high-dollar ones for last, because they're more likely to result in damage. By doing this, I can work more contracts in less time, and then I can use some of that unavoidable travel time to repair mechs and heal warriors en route to the next system and the next list of jobs. Here's an example of a one-skull mission that was extremely underrated. It ended up involving 7 mechs with a combined mass of 250 tons. I was only able to pull off a win because I dropped so heavy. Now let's talk about how to train all those mech warriors we have and how to set up our lances to use them as effectively as possible. And just to be clear, both of those things must go together. When I set up my lances, they always follow the same structure, no matter the tonnage and no matter what the specific mechs are. Every lance should have a scout mech piloted by a mech warrior who has been or is being trained as a Recon Specialist. A fully trained Recon pilot will have the sensor lock ability. This is essential for directing long-range missile fire beyond line of sight, and it also adds a general debuff to the target's evasion, making them easier to hit by all mechs with any weapon types. I cannot stress this enough. Your lance is not complete if you are not fielding a recon mech with a pilot specifically trained in that role. In addition to sensor lock, recon pilots are also trained in the piloting skills Sure Footing and Ace Pilot. These skills give the pilot extra defensive buffs and the ability to fire weapons before moving during a combat turn. This is extremely useful for any mech doing close quarters combat. When possible, you should pair your recon pilot with a fast, maneuverable, hard-hitting mech. Some of my favorite recon mechs include the Firestarter for light mechs, the Vulcan in the medium class, and the Grasshopper in the heavy class. Remember, to minimize downtime, you should have 2 mech warriors trained or in training to fill this position. In the next slot, we want a pilot trained as an Outrider. Outriders can use both Bulwark and Sure Footing for better defense in any situation, as well as the Ace Pilot skill for the ability to shoot before moving during combat. This pilot will be your primary mid to close range combat specialist. We'll use them to draw fire and flank targets for a bit of backstabbing when possible. For this, we'll need mechs that are tough and agile with good firepower. Some of my favorites for this role include the Kintaro in the medium class and the Grasshopper in the heavy class. In assault tonnage range, something like the King Crab with dual AC-20s would fit this role well. Here again, to make sure we usually have at least 1 Outrider available, we'll need to keep 2 mech warriors in rotation training for this role. For the last 2 slots in the lance, we'll want to train our pilots as Lancers. Lancers are made with 1 part guts for the Bulwark skill and 2 parts gunnery for the multi-target and breaching shot skills. Since we're always going to field at least 2 Lancers, we'll need to keep at least 3 and preferably 4 in the training rotation. In a pinch, you can substitute a Lancer for one of your Outriders in the unlikely event that both happen to be injured. However, the primary role of our Lancers will be fire support. Ideally, I like to have 1 Lancer paired with a mech set up for sniping or direct fire support, and another Lancer paired with a mech set up for indirect fire support, aka the fabled LRM boat. However, this won't always be possible. The important thing is to make sure both fire support mechs are armed with the best long-range weapons you have so that you can direct fire where needed across the battlefield. Any mech capable of mounting long-range weapons can be used as fire support. For medium mechs, the starting Blackjack is great at direct fire support. Just strip out those useless jump jets and replace them with armor and more heat sinks. For heavy mechs, the Orion is great along with the Catapult, and in the Assault class, the Stalker is probably my favorite fire support mech of all time. So, to recap, a lance with fully trained mech warriors looks like this. One Recon Specialist in a fast, agile mech to act as a scout and spotter for LRMs. One Outrider in a tough, fast mech for mid-range combat, brawling, and backstabbing. And 2 Lancers in mechs armed for long-range direct and indirect fire support. And the duty roster should have 2 Recon Specialists, 2 Outriders, and 3 to 4 Lancers in the drop rotation. I find that this configuration is extremely versatile and should be able to handle any mission type within a reasonable amount of tonnage. If you always try to go as heavy as possible all the time, you will struggle with attack and defend and target acquisition missions where you'll need fast, mobile mechs to cover ground and take out specific objectives within a limited amount of time. So anyway, that's how and why I set up my lances and train my mech warriors the way I do. Feel free to share your own favorite mech warrior builds and lance configurations below. In the next episode, I think we'll go over that underrated One Skull mission with the 7 mechs. I'll show you everything I did wrong, and we'll talk about how I managed to win anyway. But until then,
You will now be released from manual control. Mr. Dextra thanks you for your cooperation. You will now be released from manual control. Mr. Dextra thanks you for your cooperation.